Hello! Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I still plan to make videos about books on my channel, so I'm not abandoning BookTube or anything like that. But for a long time, I've been wanting to start making more videos about learning languages. I've done a couple. I did one video specifically about language learning books, and then another video about books in translation. And I really enjoyed making those, so I'm excited to talk about learning languages. It may sound like a bit of an odd hobby, but it's something I'm very passionate about and something that I don't spend nearly as much time on as I would like to. And that's actually been one of my goals for 2017, is to spend more time on hobbies that make me feel refreshed and challenged and creative, instead of, just endlessly scrolling through Twitter. So I'm hoping that making more videos about language learning will give me some much needed motivation to actually start learning languages. So today I'm going to be talking about the languages I most want to learn. There aren't a whole lot of languages that I actively don't want to learn, to be honest, but these are just kind of the ones that I most want to learn and that I think it most likely that I will actually learn at least the basics of at some point. And just to be clear, I do not speak any of these languages. So don't think that I'm some kind of superhuman language learner. The only languages I speak currently are English and Spanish, and at best I could have a short conversation with like a French child, but other than that, that's it. I know a handful of words and phrases from these other languages. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first language on my list is French. I have been trying off and on to learn French for several years now. I keep kind of stopping and starting. Other than Spanish, it's definitely the language I know best, but like I said, it's very limited to kind of simple phrases and a bit of vocabulary. I'm at a point in French where between what little French I know and the similarities between French and English and French and Spanish, when I'm reading a book and there's like a phrase in French, I can usually get the general idea of what it's saying. Like when I read an Agatha Christie book and Poirot says something in French, I can typically get the idea of what he's saying, which that alone makes me really happy, but I would love to get even better at French. For a long time, I didn't really have any interest in learning French. I thought that the only Romance language I was interested in learning aside from Spanish was Italian, which we'll get to later. So one day, I was reading an article for a class, and I kept having to look up these French phrases that were in the article. Why my Spanish professors were giving me articles with French in them, I don't know, but I kept having to look these words up, and I thought, gosh, it would be really nice to just be able at least to speak basic French so that I didn't have to look all of this up. This was also around the time that I discovered the language learning website Duolingo, so I decided to try and start learning French, mainly at first through using Duolingo. I also have some language learning books for French, so I have this Assimile New French with Ease book that came with CDs. This is a really, really great resource, but I haven't been using it as much as I would like to, so that's kind of on my list to do soon. I also have this conversational French book that's kind of old. I think I talked about it in my language learning video a couple years ago. So this is a really great book, even though I think it's out of print now. But this is another resource that I plan to use. And then I also have this Easy French Reader, which is pretty nice. It's got like basic conversations or like short paragraphs in French that are so simple that even I can understand them for the most part. And it's got some vocabulary in it and like little exercises and multiple choice questions and crossword puzzles and things like that. So this is a very nice book as well. But let's be honest, this is the goal. I just want to learn enough French that I can read Harry Potter in French. I've read it in Spanish. I'd love to be able to read Harry Potter in every language I learn. That would be hilarious. But I have heard that the French version of Harry Potter is particularly well translated. So I really want to read it, which is why I bought it, even though I don't speak French yet. So if and when I do make more language learning videos, some of them will probably be about my adventures in learning French. So we'll see how long it takes me to get to Harry Potter level. So the next language on my list of languages that I most want to learn is Swahili. So I briefly spoke about my love for the Swahili language in my language learning video a couple years ago. So Swahili is a language that's primarily spoken in East Africa in countries such as Kenya and Tanzania. So the story of how I became interested in learning Swahili is kind of funny. So when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I used to get this subscription box service. It was puzzles. It was like a book of puzzles that I got every month. And if they had something like this for adults now, I would buy it in a heartbeat because I would get so excited every time when it came in the mail. And it had like a little fake, pretend passport. And every month the puzzle book that you got was themed for a different country, and you solved puzzles, and it had, information about the country. And then when you solved all the puzzles at the end, there was like a big puzzle that you had to put together with everything you'd done, and it solved a mystery, and it was great. So one of the months must have been themed around, I think it was Kenya, and it had some words in Swahili in the puzzle book. And I just thought it was the coolest language I'd ever seen, and I just decided right then and there, completely on a whim, that I was going to learn Swahili one day, at the age of 9. So it probably also helped that I found out that a few words from The Lion King, which is my favorite Disney movie, are in Swahili. But at first, it was more of just like a random thing that I decided as a 9-year-old of, yeah, I'm going to learn Swahili one day. And then after I got out of high school and even out of college, I started looking at the language more. I Googled, kind of grammar references on it and vocabulary, and I got to learning about it, and I realized that it really is a fascinating and beautiful language, and I genuinely want to learn it. So I do have this one book on learning Swahili. I thought I had 2. I know I used to have 2, but the other one wasn't as good, so I think I might have gotten rid of it, but I don't remember doing that. But anyway, I still have this one, and I have a dictionary as well. So I'm really excited to hopefully soon get back into learning this, because it's a different challenge, than the mostly European languages that I've learned in the past. The grammar is set up completely differently and in a really fascinating way, so I'm very excited to learn Swahili. So the next language on the list of languages I most want to learn is Korean. When I was in junior high school, one of my best friends was Korean American, and I remember that there was one year where I wanted to make her a birthday card that said "Happy Birthday" in Korean, and then her name written in Korean. And so I Googled how to write "Happy Birthday" in Korean, and then I had to Google the Korean alphabet to figure out how to write her name in Korean. And because I was such a language nerd, even then I got sucked into just trying to learn the Korean alphabet. So I've been kind of interested in learning Korean ever since then. One of the interesting things about Korean is that unlike the other 2 Asian languages that Americans tend to learn, Chinese and Japanese, Korean has an alphabet. So, like I said, I kind of have dabbled in learning the alphabet. My mom also got me this book last year, Korean for Beginners, Mastering Conversational Korean, that came with a CD-ROM. But yeah, I'm really excited to learn Korean. I think the biggest challenge actually will be the pronunciation, because what little I've looked at the book and listened to the CD-ROM for this, there's some letters that sound very similar to each other, to where we wouldn't distinguish the sounds in English. They would just sound like the same sound, but in Korean it could mean the difference between 2 different words. So I think the pronunciation might be a little challenging, but I'm very excited to attempt to learn Korean. So the next language on my list of languages I most want to learn is Italian. So when I was in Spain, and actually even before I went to Spain, I feel like for a long time, aside from Swahili, Italian was the language I thought I would learn next. Because it just seemed kind of obvious. It's similar to Spanish, but different. So I thought it might be a little easy to learn. And in fact, when I studied abroad in Spain, I originally wanted to take a class in Spain to learn Italian. So like it would have been a class for native Spanish speakers and, you know, anyone else who wanted to be in the class learning Italian. So I thought that was the coolest idea ever, but it ended up not happening. But I was still so interested in learning Italian at the time that I ended up buying this random book on learning Italian when I was in England, and kind of started trying to learn some Italian when I had spare time, like on plane trips and stuff. So I got this, and really started trying to learn Italian before I eventually ended up switching over to French. But before I switched over to French, I bought a few Italian books. I have a lot of the same books for French and Italian. I have this Conversational Italian in 20 Lessons, just like that French one. I have this Berlitz Self-Teacher, which I have this in French, but I don't know where it is right now. But I have this. And then I also have this Ultimate Italian book, which is pretty nice. And then I have an Easy Italian Reader, like my Easy French Reader. So I don't want to focus on Italian right now because I feel like I've come so far with my French that I want to keep at it so that I can at least get decent at it before I move on to another Romance language that I could get it confused with. So that's kind of why I've put Italian on hold for the time being, but once I get better at French and maybe learn a little bit of another language and I'm not at risk of confusing French and Italian, then I think Italian will be next on the list. So those are really the only ones I have books for, but there's a couple other honorable mentions that I might learn eventually one day. One of those is Japanese. I think I'm a little intimidated by Japanese because it does have characters, kanji, to learn. So I do think that would be a bit of a challenge, but I mean, any language presents its own challenges, so hopefully one day I can at least learn the basics of Japanese. I've had a couple of friends who took Japanese in college. One of them minored in Japanese in college, and she tried to teach me a little bit, but it's been a while, so it didn't really stick. So I'm hoping that I can, you know, get a book or two on learning Japanese at some point, but I also feel like I kind of have enough languages to learn that I have books for already, so it's on the list, but it's not at the very top of the list. And then the other language that I may eventually learn is German, and for a long time I was not interested in learning German. I unfortunately bought into the stereotype that it's a very harsh sounding language, and the other thing that turned me off of it was I read these essays by Mark Twain that he wrote when he was learning German, and they're absolutely hilarious. I'm gonna post a link to them in the description because even if you aren't a language nerd, I think you'll enjoy them. They point out the ridiculousness of German grammar. So after reading those essays by Mark Twain, I thought, this is too complicated, this grammar is ridiculous, I'm not doing it. You know, it's not on my list. But then I started getting into genealogy more, which is another hobby that I would like to spend more time on than I do. And part of my ancestry is German. And I thought it would be really cool to learn a language that was spoken by my ancestors. Most of my ancestry is English, Irish, and German. And since I already speak English and finding resources to learn Irish can be a bit difficult, I thought, well, maybe I will learn German at some point. So, because I really do think it would be cool to learn a language that was spoken by my ancestors. So that's why I may eventually break down and learn German, but it's not near the top of the list. So those are all the languages, well, who are we kidding? Those are some of the languages that I want to learn. Like I said, there's really not a lot of languages that I actively don't want to learn. Like, I'm open to just about anything, but those are kind of the highlights and the ones I have books for. So I'll be back with another video about books soon. In the meantime, please tell me in the comments what you think about me posting a few videos on learning languages. If you're interested in getting started with learning languages, let me know if there's any particular subject that you'd like me to talk about related to language learning or any particular language. Like I said, some of the videos will probably be about my adventures in learning French, since that's the one that I'm hoping to mainly focus on for the time being, and maybe one other. So until next time, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.